Welcome to the One-to-One podcast, brought to you by the Learning Technology Center of Illinois. The LTC is a program of the Illinois State Board of Education. We support all K-12 districts, schools, and educators in Illinois through technology initiatives, services, and professional learning opportunities.
Our work addresses high-need technology and digital learning challenges, and we help schools increase access to and use of technology to improve educational opportunities for students. Our hosts are
Brian Bates, Associate Executive Director for Professional Learning.
And Matt Jacobson, Online Learning Coordinator. Let's get started. Hey, Brian, how's it going?
It's going well. The temperature's changing, and we're seeing less sunlight, and so I know winter's coming up, and that's disappointing, but it's also exciting for holiday season and things like that.
Well, good point. We've got the holidays coming up. This episode is going to be published just a little bit before Thanksgiving. So, Brian, what kind of technology are you most thankful for?
I think one thing that year after year that I'm most thankful for, and I'm working my way towards the complete and total takeover of my home, but is any type of home automation, like whether it's smart plugs, smart bulbs, having the ability to connect to appliances, garage door opener, all the way down to smart speakers and being able to talk to a smart speaker and have it do something in my house. I absolutely, my goal is one day to have like the fully automated house that does everything for me, or I can tell it to do something and it does it. And so it's really interesting. It seems like every time I think about, well, how could you see that in a like connected automated system? Like how would this device or this appliance, and then suddenly it becomes automated somehow. But that's one thing that I absolutely love.
I have smart bulbs. I just have regular lamps on either side of me here, but I have smart bulbs in them, and I can tell my assistant of choice to, turn them on and off and make them, a little more white or a little more yellow, depending on the mood and how tired my eyes are from staring at screens all day. And it's super helpful. We finally jumped into the robot vacuum craze that started like 10, 12 years ago. We're finally there. But I got to say, it changed my life. I love it. It'll vacuum and it will mop. I love that.
Yeah, those are great. Also, we've got one of those for our house, and we have a dog, and so of course running that every few days definitely helps keep the house a little tidier, and it makes it, when you do have to actually go in and do a deeper clean, not nearly as bad as it would have been if you didn't have that running. So those things are great too.
Yeah.
What about you?
What's
something you're thankful for?
Us, we're in front of computers all day and we use this stuff all the time. But when Android Auto first came out, I was like, well, and even going back to, when Google Maps, you could start to use Google Maps. My bachelor's degree is in geography education, and I swore coming out of college that I would never use this fancy GPS stuff that they were coming. It would always be a paper map. They taught me how to draw paper maps, and I loved it. And I tell you, I can't tell you the last time I took a drive. Well, when I take a drive to somewhere that's a ways away or somewhere I haven't been in a long time, I'll plug in my phone to the car and bring up Android Auto and just say, hey, whoever your trigger word is, navigate to wherever this place is. And it's just kind of nice to have that there and on the screen. And I've told other people this story. sometimes when I'm bored or when, if it's a stressful day or something like that, I'll just drive somewhere out in the country I've never been before with the GPS off and then plug it in just to see what's going on, you
Mhm.
know, and see something new. And then when I need to get back to the house or something, I'll plug it back in and say, okay, take me home and navigate me home a different way. It's silly, but it's kind of fun to explore. I love doing stuff like that.
I mean, it's a great feature, and I don't know. I hope we don't lose any subscribers or any listeners or people viewing because of this, but I feel like we should have the disclaimer that we are both Android and very faithful Android Google Pixel users.
True.
Hopefully people don't look down on that more than they might already. But yeah, Android is so great. It's so nice that I know that when I first started driving and you went somewhere you weren't familiar with, like you go to MapQuest, you type it
Right.
in, print off the directions, and you think about like that was so great, right? Because you had these directions, turn by turn directions sitting there next to you. But then you think about like, I was reaching down and grabbing a piece of paper and
Mm-hmm.
holding it up while driving. Well, I mean, you're not, you probably should do this when you're stopped, I guess, but holding it up and you're looking at it and trying to read and trying to drive. And now it's just like, you've got somebody there. And if I sometimes forget to unmute it, but it tells you right when you need to turn and you can watch that right on your screen. It's really nice. It's
Yeah.
one of those pieces of tech you say to yourself, how did we get where we were going before this? Like, how did we ever find our way somewhere? Like, I don't
Well,
know.
as you were describing that, I'll tell you how I used to do it when I first got out of college in the extraordinarily early 90s. Um, I I would map out my route on the paper map and I'd figure out where to turn, take interstate whatever to exit, 35B or something.
Mhm.
And I'd write it out on an index card
Oh, wow.
and I tape it to the steering wheel, to the hub of the steering wheel. That's the kind of nerd I am.
See, my problem is I'm so busy looking around and looking at what's this farmer doing? What's
Yeah.
going on? Oh, they're building something new over here. I'd look down at my card and go, oh, 15 miles ago, I was supposed to turn at that exit. I
Whoops.
need that guidance. Somebody telling me, hey, buddy, come back to us here. You got to be turning soon. So
Yeah. And now we all complain about recalculating,
yeah,
recalculating. Uh, So
yeah,
are you a Google Maps or a Waze user?
Google Maps for sure.
Okay. I'm playing with Waze. I'm not sure. And does Google own Waze or
I don't know. I'm just I'm stuck in the Google atmosphere, and it's hard for me to break away from the things that are specifically Google. So some people,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, they probably are owned by or run by somebody else at this point, but
yeah.
I'm not I'm
What
not as
about for
familiar with
non
it.
what about for work stuff? What's your at work kind of tech go to tech? Excuse me.
That's really good. I think that when it comes to like the stuff that I use at work, I mean, I think it'd be silly to not bring up AI at this point,
Yeah.
and how AI within different tools is so important. Um, it's been around, and some version of AI has been a part of a lot of the things that we use in tech, and for a while, and it just hasn't been that big of a deal. I mean, you think about predictive text, and you're writing an email, and oh, I can hit tab instead of typing out the next three words. That sounds great to me. You think about spell checking and correcting your spelling. That's awesome because I'm not a great speller. And so it's awesome to have those different things there. But then, as we moved in and like I meant, it would be silly not to talk about how, uh, you know, generative AI tools such as ChatGPT have made uh, someone who like me who is not as thrilled when it comes to having to write something, or maybe you get those, you got to write it and you're just kind of in a block and you just need something or just some ideas even. Like that's one thing that I've started to use ChatGPT for, is not necessarily to do the entire task for me and say,
Right.
write me this email that includes all of these things, but just like give me a list of ideas for this type of topic, or give me a handful of questions that you might put on a survey about X, Y, or Z. And like when you start getting some of those just ideas, you might not go with what they suggest to you, but at least it gets you thinking about like, oh, hey, there's some good ideas that I could actually take and pull from and use as I need. So
Absolutely. You're spot on with that. Um, my world, I live inside learning management systems much of the day, and I like to try to keep up to date with those. I am amazed at all the tools that are available now that will help um, people who teach online to generate course shells and text that supports a video, or like you're saying, even writing quiz questions and creating interactive elements in uh, that you can use inside a course. As I'm looking around, all the new ones I'm looking at all have something like that built in already, and it amazes me. Um, and that's kind of one of the things that I think AI is really good for. It You talk about, getting ideas, getting the ball rolling, getting the tedious, the difficult. It takes a lot of time, but maybe not a lot of brain power
mhm.
to get things rolling. And AI does a nice job of kind of building that outline, building that shell, and letting you uh, modify it to make it yours. And that's the kind of stuff that just fascinates me about AI and all the tools that are coming out.
Yeah, I
Because
think you know, I think that one of the misconceptions about using AI in general, and I'm not even talking necessarily about education, is um, if you go into it the expectation I'm going to type something in, and even image generation for that matter. If I'm going to just go and ask it to do something for me, and I'm going to take whatever it gives me at face value, that's you can't use it that way because there's still there's the flaws in AI still that
Mhm.
it's not perfect, and you have to go in and make it your own because we could get into the ethical debate of that piece, and where it's getting the information from, and it's just you know that's for a whole nother conversation, but I
Right.
mean, you still have to take that and like when I have it make write me an email or write me we just got done with IETC. I had it help me create a lot of the communications I was sending out. I still got to put in a lot of the information myself, but it gives me that shell that gets rid of the how do I start this? How do I format this? It gets rid of all that and just lets me focus on what do I need to make sure that I contribute to this to make this a complete product.
Uh, that I think is the real value that AI brings. Not that, you know, and I guess that's looking at it from the adult professional point of view. There's a lot of other, value, good or bad,
Mhm.
um, when you look at it from the point of view of the students and things like that, of course.
Yeah.
And like you said, the ethics of AI is something that's a Pandora's box that I don't want to get into just yet, not today. But coming up in this episode, we have some really great ideas
Mhm.
for getting started with AI from a friend of the LTC, Dr. Monica Burns from classtechtips.com. Monica was at IETC. She keynoted IETC, what,
In
2 years ago?
2022, just last year,
Oh,
she
just
was one of our
last year.
keynote
Wow.
speakers last year. Yep.
Wow. And we will also have a little follow up today on some even more practical applications of AI that educators can use from the LTC's own Eric Santos at the end of this episode. So while we're doing that, I do want to bring this up. While we were talking about tech we're thankful for, we did do as an organization, we did a video tech we're thankful for 2 years ago now from at Thanksgiving 2021. And we'll put a link to the show notes to that video in the show notes, and it's up on screen for those of you watching. But for right now, if you're interested, why don't we hand it over to Dr. Monica Burns?
I'm excited. Let's get started.
Well, hi, everybody. We're thrilled to welcome Monica Burns here on LTC One to One. So, Monica, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background? What do you do?
Absolutely. Well, excited to be here with you both. I'm a former New York City public school teacher. I'm still here on the East Coast. And for the past several years, I've spent my time working with schools and districts and organizations around education technology integration and writing on my blog, Class Tech Tips, and some publications through ASCD, as well as my podcast, the Easy Ed Tech Podcast.
Thank you so much for being a part of this today. We're glad to have you. I know that we've worked together in the past. Both Matt and I have worked with you in the past, and so we were excited when we had the opportunity to have you come and join us today. So thank you for being a part of this. One of the things that that Matt and I had talked about was just the the amount of practical tips and just the opportunities that you give to educators of like here's how you can integrate tech. And I'd mentioned this before, it's the cliche, like here's something you can do in your classroom tomorrow, but it really is true. It's like so super simple, super easy ways to integrate tech. And I guess what makes you so passionate about ed tech and the things that you do and the different types of supports you provide for educators?
Well, as a classroom teacher, I really wanted things that were going to work, that I could use right away, and that fit well into some of the bigger plans that maybe I had control over, or maybe I didn't, right? Whether it was a new curriculum that we were working on, a new initiative in our school, or even just working around the logistics of what we had access to, right, at a certain time. So it's always been really important to me to make sure I'm sharing things that are actionable, right, that might fit into a larger picture. So if I'm talking to educators around formative assessment, right, I'm not talking to them about the plan for a district-wide rollout, right, for that initiative, but how to support that, right, at a classroom level. So I might talk to school leaders around what it looks like to bring in tools and resources that honor voice or have audio components or something that fits into a larger scale plan around a big initiative like formative assessment. And so at the teacher level, I spend time in classrooms. I spend time talking with a lot of teachers. And from my own practice, I think it's really important to have something that someone could try out right away, as opposed to a big idea that might sit for a little bit. Like, I want something that you can get hands on, you can see some success or maybe some hiccups that encourage you to keep moving forward.
And I know a lot of teachers right now have some really big questions about some really big things that are happening in education. So, you know, that practical point of view where it's, how can I use this tomorrow or whatever is so important. And that's like the key to your podcast and the blog posts that you write. So we all know what that big buzzword education is right now, right? It's intelligence, and specifically that generative AI that we see in tools like ChatGPT and Bard, and teachers are kind of in that, oh my goodness, what do we do with this? So when you talk to teachers, and they ask you, about AI and what can we do with it, um, what do you tell them? How can teachers use those generative AI tools right now?
Well, I appreciate the distinction you made there, Matt, around generative AI, because we might be used to interacting with, say, predictive text in our text messaging that we do throughout the day. Like it kind of knows what word might be next, or it even helps us spell that word, right, before we can even type it in. It's not writing our text messages or taking over our conversation, but AI has been alongside so much of the work that we do professionally and personally. And generative AI is a bit different, right? So it's something that technology that's creating content that didn't quite exist before, right? So it's creating something new ish, right? I'm putting those conditions on there on purpose, right? Because it's pulling from language, right? That could include the whole internet, right? Or another specific model, depending on the tool that you're using to create something based on your output. So for educators, for all of us, right? In whatever role we might be in, right, who are used to doing a Google search, we're doing something a lot different with generative AI. We're ideally providing a task, right, or an input that has specific enough that it's going to generate something we can use. It could include a list of things, kind of like a Google search, but perhaps there's more context, or this is the reason why this thing goes on this list, right? Or it could be something really concrete, like make a table that compares and contrasts these two things, so then I can use that to maybe get me 80% of the way there, not 100%. I'm probably not going to copy and paste that, right? But use it as a great start to accelerate my workflow. And that's so much of the work that I've done this year, which I think complements what I've been doing for over a decade now, which is trying to make ed tech easier for educators, right? Here's a new tool, right, that can help make our lives easier with instructional planning, generating ideas, supporting differentiated instruction. It's not going to do all of that unless we have the expertise and the experience to even know what to ask, which I think is an important thing to mention. But for educators who are curious, one thing that I've done so much in my in-person sessions, especially, I think it's easier in person to encourage people, like open up that device, right? If we're on Zoom, maybe you have a couple tabs going, but if we're in person, try this right now. Try this while I'm talking, while I'm sharing examples, because it is something that you can have some level of success with right away. And I think that's so important for educators to see what's possible, is really getting hands on. And there is that kind of quick win, if you will, of seeing a result based on the input, even if it's not perfect, or where you'll be next week. You're going to get pretty far, just that first time you try it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I love I love that you mentioned that it gets you about 80% of the way there. Because I've been guilty of this myself. I've said, gone into ChatGPT and asked it to write me something and pulled it, and I've copied and pasted it and thrown it in something, and I've looked at it again and be like, nope, I need to fix a few things there. And so I do
Mhm.
appreciate the fact that you highlight, yeah, there's still going to be some work on your end. And I think that that's a big part of it. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. And even this morning, I'm working on a project where I just wanted a little bit extra help with some APA citation, right? I've gone through my whole doctoral program, and graduated with a graduate degrees without ChatGPT. So I know I can do this, right? But if I pop in the information, ask it for a citation, it's only as good as the information I gave it, right? So if I left something out in what I asked, if I didn't put that page number, it's not going to know, right? So even though it can help us and almost look like it's going to replace, right, a problem or a pain point, it really is only as good as we are, right, in using that tool.
yeah. I'm curious. You had mentioned, and I 100% agree with you that one of the best ways to get to know the technology is to just try it out.
Yeah.
So you'd mentioned, hey, opening up that device and trying some stuff out. What are some of those tasks that you would have teachers try out just to get their feet wet and just start seeing what generative AI can do for them in their class?
Yeah, I try to give examples, what I call tedious tasks, or those things that we can do but are no fun and sometimes take us twice as long if it's the end of the day, right? So that could include something like turning a set of data into a table. Or we know how to explain something, but if it can help give me 5 steps for explaining the lattice method of multiplication, I can fill in the blanks, or that might help me scripting a video response to a student who's struggling. So it's those things that we know we can do, but maybe is not the best use of our time, is really where I like to get started. even saying, scan this piece of information and highlight the bold or the key points. It's not going to be perfect, right? There's going to be things that I think are important because of my specific contacts, but it is going to help, right, save time. So I even share lots of examples often when working with schools and things like that. Even something silly like if you're teaching first grade, I could list 10 fruits and 10 vegetables, but this is going to be a lot faster. And if I ask it to add an emoji next to each one, I could go hunting, right, and picking for the emoji. But once I realize there's no emoji for that one vegetable I chose, right, like that's going to save me a lot of time and brain power too. I could do these things, but it might not be the best use of my time. So I've shared examples like that often when talking to educators, really at all levels. But one of my favorites is just put a sticky note like next to your workspace. And if something's a pain, if it's taking you too long, you might not know what the prompt is yet. You might need that shower thought or walk the dog thought, right? Or empty the dishwasher thought time. But if you just write it down and say, this is a pain, you might find yourself a week from now with a solution like, oh, I bet I could say this, or I bet I could put this in. And that's going to save me oodles of time. And just that energy that it takes to do some things that maybe we could reallocate in other ways.
I have a question for you, Monica. I have had administrators come to me and say, can uh, these AI tools, whatever you choose, um, can these AI tools create these like enrollment projections and financial projections and things like that? And I, that's not really the the tools can do. So, what kind of things uh, uh, can AI help generative AI that we know, at least that we know of today? How can it help administrators in the daily tasks they do?
Yeah. So projections are tough for anyone, right? Especially when there's so many variables to the information or data point, right? We could say make a graph with, the line's going to go in this direction, with this equation, right? And all of that. But one thing that maybe is adjacent to that idea is this ability to review a lot of information and look for patterns or trends that we might not see on first glance. So there are some tools. Claude, like Claude Monet, right, is one kind of like ChatGPT that I really like. They've been in the news the past few weeks because of Amazon's investment in Anthropic, which is their parent company. And so with that one, you can upload a document to it and it can do whatever you ask it to do with the document. So, of course, you want to be mindful of personal information or sensitive information, all of those sort of things. I hope that would go without saying, right? But if you have something that's more general and you're saying find the patterns here, what's something unexpected I might not notice that connects all of the information here. So if you are developing a prompt like that, it might find things that you don't anticipate because it's able to look at those patterns or look across different data points that we might come in with certain bias and that we might just not notice or see. So that's something that I think is interesting, is this ability to upload or review files, larger pieces of information. And just as fellow podcasters, I'll tell you, I will often upload, we've been playing with this here. We've probably done it maybe 6 or 7 weeks. I've been uploading the transcript from the podcast that I do. And instead of picking out all the things that we mention and adding links on the show notes page, I just say, make a list of all the things we talk about that are resources someone might want to explore. And bam, right? Again, not perfect, but if I can get 80% of the way there, it's going to save a lot of time. So that's another thing that I don't know everyone is looking at so closely, is that upload the document piece. And of course, there's plugins with ChatGPT and all of that. But with Claude, it's a pretty seamless process. And I've really liked that interface as another option.
Well, and again, it gets back to your point of try the tools. Don't be
Mhm.
afraid to go out and explore.
Mhm.
We found the same thing recently doing looking at charts with Google Bard.
Yeah.
We didn't
Mhm.
have the plugin installed for ChatGPT, but Google Bard it's kind of right there, and Claude I haven't even thought about. So thank you, I
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
and Bard's been doing some interesting things where I've played around with it to get pictures as results too, right?
Mm,
So if I'm asking for a step-by-step guide to start composting in my classroom, right? And I say include pictures, right? And I just add in that extra piece, just like you might say, here's the kind of examples I'm looking for, right? Those extra conditions can make a big difference. And that's one of the reasons why I think Bard's been really interesting is because of those picture results I think are pretty nice on that platform.
Uh, One of the things I'm thinking about, we've talked about like classroom teachers, we've talked about administrators, and I know from my experiences, and I'm sure that you've experienced this as well. Um, the challenge that you often get when you start talking about tech integration
Mhm.
is from the non-traditional classroom
Yeah.
teacher, someone who's in the PE class, someone who teaches
Mhm.
band, those types of things, family consumer sciences, all those different types of non-traditional classroom settings. So I'm curious if you have any tips or suggestions or thoughts on how someone who's not in that, maybe it's not maybe the traditional role where I'm pulling up a reading document or something like that and uploading or asking it to write a paper or write a response. How could
Mhm.
those non-traditional class teachers um, utilize generative AI for their classrooms?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so many things that I think are exciting, especially if you're in a space where maybe you felt like this PD is not for me, right? Which I totally feel, right? And is valid for those all hands, right? PD days. I was with a school in St. Louis in August of this year, talking to some PE teachers as well as everyone else. And one of the things we were doing together was, right, I am teaching this, make some connections to, right, whatever I know those third graders are learning. So if we're doing a basketball unit, how can I connect this to fractions, right? Or what are some real world, if you will, right, connections to the rules in tennis, right, that I can bring into a group of seventh graders, or even things like make a playlist for me of songs that feature healthy eating and tell me how I could use these to, share some new vocabulary words with students. So there's a lot there that I think are great for cross curricular connections. So that's one place I would start, especially if you're in a space where you're making a commitment towards the science of reading and looking at reading, right, across different content areas this year. That might be something where you say, right, how could we bring in compare and contrast, to our conversation on X, Y, and Z. Or it's been flagged for me that this group of students is really struggling with cause and effect, right? How could I bring that into the lesson that we're doing on volleyball, right, with my group of PE students? And if we're just using that language and vocabulary, right, we're making a school-wide commitment, right, to maybe it's every, once a month we have a different literacy skill we're focused on, right? And maybe it's November that it's cause and effect and kids are just hearing it from all directions. And if you're that teacher who says, I don't really know if this makes sense for me, that's one great place to go to.
what a great
I love it.
idea.
Those are great ideas. I like the idea of that kind of commitment to teaching vocabulary outside of just your traditional vocabulary
Mhm.
lesson. So I think that's a great way to have AI help you make those connections.
And without making it forced, right? Because we
Yeah.
could just drop in vocabulary words casually into a conversation. But if this is going to give us some great examples, right? Maybe even have it make a scene between two people who are struggling with whatever challenge in that discipline and having two students act it out, right? Or pairs of students act it out, right? This is something that someone who teaches one discipline or one subject area might say, that's not really in my skill set. We don't do a lot of writing. I don't see myself as a creative writer, but here's where I could go to generate something that I could share with a group.
That's great.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's a great way, an entry point. It's a very easy entry point to it.
Mhm.
so Monica, I'm sure teachers are wanting to really dig in and learn more about AI. Um, where are some good places to go to find resources as far as using generative AI, either behind the scenes
Mhm.
in classrooms and schools or with our students?
Yeah, so there's a lot of places that are putting emphasis on this right now. So if you're looking for some high level, even outside of education, more industry research that can support school-wide initiatives, the Harvard Business Review is putting out some really great content around, what is happening and the impact of this on the workforce in the future that I think are really great and might connect even to some electives or special work that's happening at a school level that might take that in, business classes, you name it, right? But might be great for some high level planning, right, on extracurricular programs, all of those sort of things. The Office of Ed Tech is another good resource for finding some big takeaways, some things that can help with conversations school-wide on policy and what community guidelines are. That's a conversation that I'm not leading, right? I'm talking much more about the instructional planning component and the educator use cases. But if that's an area for policy that you're looking for, I think that's a great resource. ISTE has some really good things they've pulled together, some nice landing pages too. And I know that, I've been spending a lot of time sorting through favorites, making lists of prompts for different educators. And so my website, classtechtips.com, I just added maybe 2 months ago now, an artificial intelligence resource button at the top. And that has all the blog posts, all the podcast episodes that I've done. So with some great educator stories in there too, and a quick reference guide that I put together with ISTE and ASCD. So a lot of organizations are looking at this, and just like my site where I've kind of added in the button to pull things together, I think you'll see that more and more, whether it's the Office of Ed Tech or ISTE or other organizations that are watching this closely.
Oh, that's fantastic. We'll definitely put links to the show notes, to those resources in our show notes at when this episode is published. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. That there's a lot of great resources out there, and appreciate all the resources that you have on your site and all those things that you're doing, your podcast, your blog posts. The generative AI guide is a fantastic guide. I love reading through it and checking out all the different things. What else is on your horizon? Anything upcoming we should be looking out for, and how else can people connect with you outside of this podcast or your other podcast or your website?
Yeah, well, I'm excited to continue to share resources on the blog, on the podcast. I have events like FETC on my calendar to start the year. So I'll be in person there. I'll be in Texas at an ASCD Leadership Summit just next week as we're talking today. And that's going to be something where I'm excited to have those conversations with folks from all different parts of the country. And sometimes there's international folks who come into that too, right? Who are sharing their use cases. And right now, that's my focus, right? Is looking at how I can build out resources for educators in addition to the work that I've always done and continue to do on finding templates and, quick wins and creative projects and fun seasonal ideas, right? Right? How can we really use this generative AI to accelerate our workflow, to build a foundation of understanding that we can bring to students and families and colleagues? I think those are two really big areas that I'm excited about right now. And as I mentioned with that APA ChatGPT citation example, I'm working on on another project that I'll have more information on to share. Not to be too much of tease it out too much there, but that I'll have more information to share with early next year.
Well,
Awesome.
Monica, thank you very much. I know that you're super busy today, but we appreciate you carving out a little time from in your schedule to share with our listeners and viewers some of your ideas and very practical things that students, teachers, counselors, everyone involved in education can use immediately to help make life a little easier. I know for one thing, I'm going to use AI to help generate our podcast show notes.
Awesome. Yeah.
And you'll be able to find links to classtechtips.com and all the other things that we talked about in this episode right there. Dr. Burns, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was great. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Santos, and I'm the Regional EdTech Coordinator for the LTC. I am the RETC for the Chicagoland area. My presentation is going to be Sneaky AI. These are tools that you might use every day or be familiar with as an educator, but you didn't know that AI features have already crept into those tools. So you might be familiar with ChatGPT or Google Bard, some of the bigger generative AI tools. These are places where AI is making its way into everyday tools you use already. So let's get started. The first of these 6 is Canva. If you're not familiar with Canva, it's an excellent tool for design. You can create flyers, posters, postcards, social media posts, videos, animations, on and on. It's free for educators, so definitely check it out. But it has a lot of built-in AI tools. Let's first look at the image generator AI tool. If you've ever used artificial intelligence to make an image, you know that you can create a prompt and it will then create an image based on that prompt. If you need a fun way to get started with this, here's a Mad Lib for you. Pick a color, pick an animal, pick a food, pick a landmark in the world. So I chose a red elephant eating pasta in front of the Statue of Liberty. I'm going to make this a watercolor image, and I'm going to generate the image. It'll take the text prompt you just gave it, and it'll generate a set of pictures that you can use where it tries to match what you just told it to create. While it's generating that, I'll also point out that it has the ability to create videos now as well. It's an experimental feature. I asked it to generate a panning shot of the skyline of Chicago from Lake Michigan during sunset. And sure enough, I got a few seconds of a clip here of exactly that happening. And I can enter it right into my presentation right there. Really cool. All right, let's check back in on those images I was going to generate. Sure enough, there's a few examples of a red elephant eating pasta in front of the Statue of Liberty. So I could pick any one of these, insert it into my Canva project. Of course, I can also screenshot it and put it into, copy paste it then into another program. Just a quick example of how you can create just the image that you're looking for that might not be in existence out there in the real world. Of course, these are still features that are under development, and so sometimes they come out a little imperfect. So you might have to try and try again until you don't get a 3-eyed elephant, but hey, it's a start. All right, so we talked about videos, we talked about images. Let's also look at Magic Write. So Magic Write is built in to Canva where you can actually do a prompt that generates something. So I've already generated an example. I'm going to get rid of it and regenerate it. I'm going to type in a prompt. Let's say that I am a teacher, not just any teacher, a 7th grade science teacher in Illinois. True story. Write a letter home to parents introducing myself and the curriculum. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click generate. It's going to take a few seconds to think. Hopefully it understands that Illinois uses NGSS, and so it might be able to pop in some information about our curriculum. And so there we go. I can continue modifying that prompt if I want to get a little more specific about what I want it to have, but I can also just start editing this like it's a template and it's already written for me. So a great opportunity to shorten the amount of time it takes to do some of those repetitive tasks. These are just a few of the tools Canva has built in. They have an entire Magic Studio section that you can explore. Everything from those writing and image tools that I just mentioned, all the way to animation and presentation tools. So it's even got some examples here where you can generate a set of templates based on a presentation that you want to create. And it'll create brand new templates for those. So really cool stuff. More than we can fit into this presentation. This could be an entire workshop, but definitely check out that Magic Studio feature. All right, tool number 2 is Edpuzzle. For anyone not familiar with Edpuzzle, it allows you to take a video from multiple different sources, including your own videos, and insert stopping points with prompts for students. You should push those out to students, and then they answer the prompts while watching the video, and you get a dashboard that shows all of their responses. In the past, you used to have to do manual creation of those video stopping points. In this case, I'm going to show you how I can do that with AI. So I've already done a search for solar system videos on YouTube within Edpuzzle. I'm going to select this solar system video. I'm going to go to edit, and then I'm going to choose this questions tab. Now, normally I would need to, I'm going to refresh because I think I did this once and it doesn't like that. Normally I would need to manually add these questions in, but in this case, I can use the generate AI, the AI generate questions button, and I can choose either open-ended, multiple choice questions, or both. Of course, let's choose both. And it's a short video, so it just generated 2 questions, which is good. We don't want to sit here and wait for it to to do a lot of generating. We want to see the example right away. And sure enough, it puts those stopping points in the video for me, along with the question that I asked it to create. And it's even got here a multiple choice question with the answer yes or no already chosen for me. All right, of course, I don't have to stop there. I can continue editing and continuing adding my own questions or change these questions as I'd like, or discard them if I'm not happy with them. All right, our third tool is going to be quizzes. For anyone not familiar with quizzes, if you know Kahoot, and most people do know Kahoot, quizzes is very similar. It's a game-based formative assessment tool for students, and it's almost identical to Kahoot in a lot of ways. So we're going to go in and we're going to see that they have a Create with AI tool that allows you to use a YouTube video, a Google document, or even your own custom prompt or document that you upload to create a set of quiz questions that can be turned into a game. So let's actually do Create with YouTube. So I'm going to hit the upload link. I'm going to go over to this plate tectonics video that I found, and I'm going to paste in the link to that YouTube video. I'm going to tell it I want only 5 questions just so it generates a little faster for us. And I'm going to hit the generate questions button. So what it'll do is it'll grab that video, it'll analyze the transcript, and it will use it to generate questions specific to that video. Here we go. It's got 5 questions for me. They're all multiple choice. And fortunately, it was able to also identify in green the correct answer for all of those for me. Of course, as with any tool, I don't want to just trust that it got it all right the first time. I'm going to read through as a teacher with a critical eye and make sure things look correct and make any changes that I need to. But otherwise, this is ready to publish or play with my students immediately. Additionally, I don't need to necessarily use a YouTube video. I can do a custom prompt. So maybe I want to make a quiz on something that I can't find a good video for. So I'm going to make a quiz on the steps of the engineering design process. Can you tell I was a science and STEM teacher? I'm going to make it appropriate for, let's say, grade 6. Let's do 5 questions, so it's pretty fast. And then I'm going to hit generate questions. Same deal, it's going to take that prompt and now it's going to reach into its training and it's going to generate questions that are appropriate to that prompt. I'll also say while it's generating, keep in mind this is a beta feature still, which means it's under development and sometimes it doesn't get things right. So always check into those responses that it gives you. I'll also say there is a Chrome extension that you can download as well and install into Chrome. All right, we're going to wait for it to finish generating. Wait for it, wait for it. All right, as you can see, it has generated our questions. And again, it has managed to mark the correct answers correct and made my life a whole lot easier and faster. So that was quizzes, and that is definitely worth checking out. All right, our fourth one is a tool that we probably all know pretty well, and that's Google Docs and Google Slides. So you get a 2-for-1 deal here. Google Docs has a Help Me Write feature, and Google Slides has an image generator built in. For this one right now, it's only available to personal Gmail accounts, so you won't be able to see this one on your school or your work account, but it's worth taking a look at. So within Google Docs, there is the ability to click this Help Me Write button. And when I click it, I'm going to paste in the prompt that I previously used in Canva about writing a letter home to parents. I'm going to click create and it's going to generate. Again, it's just doing what a generative AI tool would do, such as ChatGPT. However, it's built right into Google Docs, so I don't have to go to an outside source and copy paste in. I also have within Docs, I do have the ability to refine in several different ways. I can change the tone, I can expand on it, or I can shorten it. I can even bullet point everything or summarize it if I feel like the response was a little bit too verbose. So I do have the ability to quickly change format to a variety of ways. I can hit insert and now it's into my Google Doc. The advantage here is also I can share that to my teammates, and of course now we have an editable collaborative document. In Google Slides, we have the ability to create images right within Slides. So I'm going to click insert and then image. And then it uses a tool called Duet AI. So I'm going to create image with Duet AI. I'm going to paste in a prompt for a picture. I'm going to add a style. I'm going to hit create. Now, the one that's on this slide here was also created with Google Duet. Duet AI. So really powerful and cool photography images that it's able to create. And so my prompt here that I just added allowed me to have a pretty dramatic looking photographic effect that will go into my presentation. Now, I will say that you are going to want to do a search for Duet AI because right now it is a feature you have to sign up for. So you'll want to go online, do a search for that, and get signed up so they can add it to your Google account. But I wouldn't be surprised if after this experimental phase, it ends up becoming just a feature that's integrated right into the tool. All right, our fifth one is Adobe. This is a big one, and again, this is one I could spend an entire workshop presenting. But if you are an Adobe fan, or even further, if your school or organization has an Adobe license, this is going to be useful. Now, the Firefly tools, most of them are free. Some of them, though, you are going to need an Adobe account, a paid account, in order to use. And so I'll talk about that a bit here. So Adobe Firefly is a suite of AI tools that allow you some pretty powerful editing abilities. We won't go through all of them, but I do recommend scrolling through this page and tinkering with all of them and learning how to use them. One is its generative AI tool, which at this point you've seen what a generative image generator can do, but this is one I created with it. I gave the prompt: a black and white Labrador retriever standing on a cliff, howling at the moon with a river in the background at night. Now, obviously, I wanted to commemorate my dog and have my dog's inner wolf put on display in this image. But one thing I want to point out about this is that I don't have to stick to just its idea and interpretation of what I asked for. In fact, with Firefly, I can load a reference image. So I'm going to go to Image Gallery here, and I'm going to choose a reference image. They have a bunch built in. Can also upload my own. Let's take this image right here. Notice when I click on it, it added it to the prompt. And so now what I'm going to do is rerun this prompt with the same text, but now as this with this image as the style reference. And when I hit generate, it's going to go through and generate that image again, but in the style of the picture that I loaded into it. So we'll give that a second to do its generative power. And as you can see, it took that color palette and the style of the look of that image and applied it to the prompt that I asked it to generate. So now I've got some images with a little bit more control. Sometimes you give it the prompts and you give it the colors and the look, and it just doesn't quite interpret what you want. And as they say, an image is worth 1,000 words, and so loading in an image is helpful. You could upload your own image. So if I wanted to add this rainbow wolf that I found online, one thing it'll do if you add your own image is it'll check that you have the correct rights to be able to load that image in, and that either you have ownership or it's Creative Commons and open for people to use. I'm going to now regenerate that same prompt of my dog howling at the moon, but with this colorful rainbow palette as the reference image. And as you can see, it applies it in creative ways to the picture. And so I've got a few different choices to choose from. And with Firefly, I'm actually able to go in and say, hey, this is actually what I was looking for. I wanted the mountains in the background to have that colorful kind of stained glass look. So let's do this. Let's generate 4 images based on this as the closest possible correct one that I was looking for. And now it'll generate an additional 3 that are more similar to this one. So really awesome tool. Of all of the generative AI tools that create images, this is probably my favorite free one. And so, of course, when you're done, you could download it or copy a link to it and so on. So that's Firefly image generator. There's also a generative fill tool that you can use. So we'll use a sample image that they have here, and we will take this lighthouse. And what we'll do first is we'll add, actually, let's totally remove the lighthouse. And back in the day when you wanted to do something like this, you needed a little bit of Photoshop skills to get it just right and to make it look good. And then you would have a hole in the background that you had to fill in. Well, the generative tool allows you to add and remove things, and it does that extra work for you of filling in the blanks. So I removed that lighthouse. We can also insert things. So I'm going to save my edits so far, and I'm going to add in, there we go. In the background, let's say tropical islands and a storm. So instead of a peaceful scene, we'll have kind of a crazy background scene going on here. It's a little intimidating. Let's see what we come up with. There we go. Oh, big storm in the background. Fun stuff. All right, we'll keep that. And we can also, instead of replacing the background, we can choose a location and add something in that location. So I'm going to now prompt it to say alien spaceship. And what it's going to do is in that space, it's going to put the thing that I just asked it to generate, and it's going to fill in the rest of the background nicely so it looks like it's actually a part of that image. And sure enough, we've just converted our peaceful image into something decidedly less peaceful. We'll keep it. All right, so that was a ton of fun, and it made photo editing accessible to everybody. And so now let's finish with something else fun, and that is the text effect generator. So in this case, I give it a text that I want to create, and then I tell it what I want to fill that text in with. So I took my name, and then I put gears, circuitry, tools, technology, STEM. I just gave it a few ideas to work with. And so it's going to generate my name, and it's going to fill it in with the text effect related to this prompt. And I tell you what, I would totally print this out and put it on my door. And I wish I'd had this tool years ago. Very cool stuff. And again, I can download or I can copy the image and so on. So that was just a sampling of what Adobe has to offer in their Firefly suite. So definitely check those out and take full advantage of those tools. All right, we'll end with one of my favorites, and that is Book Creator. So Book Creator, if you're not familiar with Book Creator, it is an amazing storytelling tool for visual and digital storytelling. You create these digital pages of this book with backgrounds and images and text. And this is actually a Book Creator book I made about how to use Book Creator. You can see all the different features that it has, and you can see how students could potentially use it as a creative storytelling tool, as a way to demonstrate their knowledge on a topic. It's also something you as a teacher can do and use to generate information for students and give them a creative way to learn. It can have text, it can have images, you can record audio, all kinds of fun stuff. What I'm going to add to it, in this case, let me skip to the end of this sample yearbook that I put together. I'm going to actually add a page, and I'm going to use the drawing tool by clicking pen, and then I'm going to use auto draw. So auto draw is actually a standalone program, but it's been incorporated into Book Creator. So auto draw allows me to start drawing something. Now I'm going to attempt to draw a lion, and this is going to be really embarrassing, but with the power of AI, it's going to, at the top of the screen, try to guess what I'm drawing. So far it's thinking maybe the moon, maybe it's an omelet, who knows. But as I add more detail, it's going to slowly start to figure out, oh, this guy is trying to draw a lion. Let's help him out. I click on this image, and it becomes a more polished version of the thing that I was trying to draw. I can still click others and change it to something else. Then I have the ability, once I've entered it, to change the color and kind of fill it in with different colors as I'd like. And so now this allows your students who maybe feel like they don't have a strong paper and pencil art skills to be able to generate realistic looking, simple clip art for their projects. It also allows you, if you don't have iPads or you don't have a touchscreen Chromebook with a stylus where students can free draw and really use their skills, it allows students to just kind of scribble using the mouse or the trackpad and be able to generate things that look realistic and make them feel like they are true artists. So those were 6 sneaky AI tools that are built into the EdTech tools that you already know and love. Hopefully they are helpful to you, and look forward to seeing much more of those AI integrations into the tools you use every day. Good luck, and reach out to me if I can be of any help to you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the LTC One-to-One podcast.
You can find and subscribe to this video podcast on YouTube.
Or listen to the audio by subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This podcast was produced by the Learning Technology Center of Illinois, a program of the Illinois State Board of Education. Learn more about the LTC at ltcillinois.org.